Hello, and welcome to the final episode of Series 4 of TGP Has A Podcast. We've had some great names talking to us across this season, and today is no exception. We're joined by Chris Johnson, a man who has been in TGP for a long time. He has had success in various different disciplines, but has always seemed to lack that nous to win a title in the championship he's competed most in of all, TGP2, being denied many times by many different drivers, including once by his teammate not letting him through on the final race of the season. So here we go then. For one last time, here's Chris Johnson. So, Chris Johnson, thank you very much for joining us at last. You've had a very colourful career in the TGP series, so it's good to have you on the show to sort of have a chat about the time in the series and what you have, and I guess more importantly, as our viewers will find out, haven't been able to achieve across the years in the TGP series. But just tell us, as we've asked our guests so far this series and in previous series, just how was it you came across us?
Well, came across TGP while I saw Alex Coates basically I think it was either Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday on the F1 game. So I did a bit of digging and found TGP that way.
And you knew Alex from racing against him in the past, did you? Or was that something that you just had come across each other in open lobbies, or?
I used to race him on Gran Turismo. I think it was 5, then 6.
And obviously that was how you came across him from the GT Sport games, and that was GT5, GT6, and then you sort of saw him racing on F1 as well, was it? Or was there sort of some way that you knew each other prior to that, or?
No, I didn't know him prior to that. It was just through Gran Turismo, so I just saw him on the F1 game, and it was the same time every week he was on, so I'm thinking that might be a league.
And your first instance of racing in leagues online was obviously through TGP Series. I'm guessing there was no leagues prior to that, or?
Yeah, I was in a league prior to that with basically those on the Sports Interactive forum to do with Football Manager. I raced with them for about 2-3 years.
And what was that league called?
I think it was originally the OTF League, like from the Off Topic Forum. It's racing today under a different name.
And obviously you haven't ended up still competing in that league, or do you still sort of keep in touch with those guys relatively regularly, still race with them as well, or is it now just sort of solely the TGP series?
I occasionally race with them, basically at the start of the game to get try and get my eye in on each particular game. So,
well, it's been mainly, of course, TGP2 that we've seen you've been racing in the TGP series. You have sort of dabbled in TGP1 as well. I'd like to start with the sort of your time in TGP1 before we come on to TGP2, because I think there's a lot to sort of unpack within that. You've only ever taken one TGP1 race victory in season 21, the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi. How was it to finally break that duck and get that first TGP1 win? How was it? How did you feel at the time? Was that something that you felt had been a long time coming, or was it something you felt you sort of stumbled into?
I think I more or less stumbled into it because it's the end of my first TGP1 season, actually.
And why is it that you think it sort of never really caught on? Why do you think you never really ended up doing more than the one win? So far, at least.
I think I only really won that race because of strategy, because of an early safety car pitted after that. Then I think it was James O'Connor and John made contact while they were catching me near the end of the race.
And how did it feel for you seeing them catching you like that? Were you feeling that you could hold on? Did you think that if they sort of caught you before the end, it was likely that they were going to get past you? I mean, how did you feel that race was going to pan out at that point after the strategy you made and taking the lead? Did you think you'd be able to hold on? Did you think the other two would catch you up?
I thought those two would be able to catch me, to be fair.
And obviously getting to the line, massive relief for you. The first season of TGP1 ended as well as it could have done. Did you think that you might have been able to build onto that to the next season?
I'd like to try. I had a near miss in the next season with the Monaco.
And you think that you could have been able to sort of get the win there? Why is it that that one didn't work out for you?
Uh, I think that was the chaotic race, most famous for the Lotus roadblock Ginger Andy comment.
Well, I think everyone remembers that race. What a nice sort of iconic moment. Um, it was the wet dry race, if I remember rightly, wasn't it? Tell us a little bit more about how you sort of approached that one.
I think I think it was a dry wet. I think I pitted once again under safety car to go to Inters.
And that was obviously a decision you made, sort of seat of the pants, or did you think as soon as the track got to a certain condition, that would be the right decision to make coming in for the pit stop?
Well, I wasn't the fastest, so it was one of those. I may as well take a. I thought I may as well take a gamble.
Well, a gamble you did take, and obviously it very nearly worked out for you. And if I remember rightly, was it Paul that was your teammate that season, which led to the roadblock incident? Because I think he hadn't pitted, had he? If I remember rightly.
No, no, I think I was in the Red Bull. I think you were my teammate, possibly. I think at that point I was teammates with you in TGP1 and TGP2.
Oh yes, yes, we were both in the Red Bull, weren't we? So
Yeah,
it was Paul, and who else was in the roadblock? Do you remember?
possibly Wingsman, something like that.
Oh, possibly. But anyway, as we said, it's mainly been within TGP2 that you've had um, success within the sort of TGP series, but you've never been able to claim a title. You've come very close. Dom very famously called one season was going to be your year, which never quite worked out. Why is it that you've never been able to take that next step and move to a sort of championship? You've had plenty of championship challenges, but never really being able to push it to the next level. Why do you think that is?
Well, the season which Dom claimed to be my season, I didn't actually win a race, and that was the season where I think you run Joe close,
That's right, yeah.
and there was a spar incident, which shouldn't be talked about. I think he turned it on you, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
Yeah, I don't. I think I've not obviously been quick enough. I know I've had possibly some connection issues over the years, which at least nowadays you can get back into the lobby, which is a positive.
And why do you think that has hampered you? Do you think you would have been able to achieve more with better connection? How do you think that's affected you?
No, but maybe it's one of those because I'm the lags and I can't really see where the position of a car is. I can't really go for a move possibly without possibly taking them out.
And is that something that you think has been quite a key factor in you not being able to take a title success? Because let's not forget, in your time in TGP2, you've claimed 25 victories and 14 pole positions. So you're no slouch, and you've been able to string together race wins. Surely the connection can't be the sole purpose, the problem, as we should say, for you not taking the title when you've had the race wins that you have.
It probably is one of the multiple factors. I know, especially over the last few seasons, I've struggled with the qualifying pace.
And why do you think that is?
Maybe I've been consistent rather than going out for one lap pace, or I can't push to that limit.
And do you think that at some point you will be able to get a little bit further with that? Is that something that you think you can develop a little bit further for this season?
Hopefully I can. The current season in thingy's not gone too badly, but it's one of those. I've out-qualified Joe so far, so that's not too bad.
And obviously, all the way back in season 14 was the first season that you really had as a chance of taking a title, competing against the likes of Jamie and Jack Gooding. And there was just 10 points between the three of you at the end of your season. What were your sort of memories of that title battle? Did you think of yourself as the underdog for that season, or did you think of yourself as being someone who should have been winning that title?
I'll be honest. I think out of the three title protagonists, I think I led the championship at least. So I'm an underdog in that case, but it's one of those. I think we're about equal, to be fair. I think I got a damage in the last 2 or 3 races where Dom literally had to hold up the pack at a second Baku race during that season.
And obviously that wasn't quite enough to take you to the title. But obviously it was quite close. Do you feel like you could have? Were there any races in that season that you could have done better in, or could have done something differently that would have given you that title?
There is probably, I can't remember specifically, but I feel like the other two potentially could come. We dropped points there, and there.
And I guess that it then sort of later on in your time, there was a chance for you again to take a title, and it came down to the last race of the season. But Dom, your teammate at the time, didn't pull over to let you take the points you would have needed, or the position you would have needed to get the points to win the title in the decider in Abu Dhabi. Do you understand why it was that Dom didn't do that? What were your thoughts of it, obviously at the time, and now reflecting back on it?
At the time, I was furious. I'm thinking, he screwed me here. But I think over the years, because he's actually the league owner and Supremo, Bernie Eccles Dom, as we jokingly call him, it's one of those. It looks dodgy if he basically gifts someone a title over someone else. You can't really play favourites.
And that's a decision you understand a little bit better now, but obviously at the time, as you said, you were quite annoyed with it. But looking back now, you don't hold any resentment towards what happened.
Obviously, once I get my first title, I'll probably. There's still slight resentment until probably I win my first title then.
So obviously Dom needs to look out the next time you're racing side by side. Maybe you'll give him a little bit less room after that one, will you?
Well, it's one of those. I've probably still respected him the same on track as prior to that.
And so now we come to another chance you had of potentially winning a title. This time in season 28, you lost out that season to Magic Poop Cannon. I think if I remember rightly, there was a race in which you spun yourself out, or you spun yourself out and got a penalty at the penultimate corner of the final race on the final lap, which handed the title to Magic Poop Cannon. Do you think that you're sort of your own worst enemy when it comes to final races and title deciders? Because there's obviously a few instances here where you could have won titles, you could have done the job, but it hasn't happened. Do you think that it's sort of you've got to take a little bit of blame on that yourself for perhaps not acting right in the last moments?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the fact that at the end of that season, I was being out-qualified by Bazza, my teammate, and the Mercedes, and with the constant early safety cars, which meant basically we double stacked, and I was then having to recover multiple times, which didn't help.
And I guess that with that in mind, of course, do you feel like it would have been wrong for you to have won the title that season, not having that pure pace?
It was one of those. I managed to get myself a decent lead after the first 8 races, winning 5 of them. So I got myself into that a massive lead. Then it just, for whatever reason, everyone else just improved, and instead of qualifying like 4th, 5th, 6th, I was 7th, 8th.
And do you think that had you qualified better that season, you would have ended up putting yourself in a better position to have won the title?
I reckon so. It's one of those. I'm less likely to get an incident and/or when the safety car comes out. At least then I potentially maybe 1 or 2 races I would have been ahead of Bazza. Then going into the finale, I could have been maybe ahead rather than going in 3 points behind.
And so looking ahead, of course, as you said, you're competing in TGP2 again this season, teammate Joe Sayer. yeah, you haven't quite had any fantastic results quite coming in just yet. No race wins. It seems like Wet Lemons and Lewis Craig are going to be running away and battling for the title. So it could end up being yet another season in which you don't take the TGP2 title. Do you see this happening for yourself? Do you believe that you can win a TGP2 title?
I believe I can. Law of averages dictates. I'll literally have to probably be here till about season 100 and featured on like season 20 of this podcast or something about it.
And what do you think you've got to do to take a title? What's Chris Johnson got to do in order to win a TGP2 championship?
Probably improve my pace, improve my qualifying pace. Make sure I don't put it in the barrier like I did in Saudi Arabia, because I was on for a podium in there. I just feel like every little mistake I make when I put it in the barriers, one of my front wheels decides, nope, I'm not going to compute today.
Well, let's turn our attention to perhaps something that you have had a little bit more success at, which is TGP FIFA. Obviously, the very different direction that TGP series moved in, obviously moving to football from motorsport. Now, in season one, you lost out on the title to Chin only by goal difference. Chris, was that yet another hard one to take for you at the time? I mean, how did you feel about that one at the time?
Yeah, it was another heartbreak where I think a few games before the end of the season I lost to Dom, which basically meant that he potentially cost me another championship.
It does seem to be him always that's getting in the way of you winning some championships, doesn't it? Really?
Well, them two. Think myself for the one with poop cannon.
Yes. And then in season three, you were able to turn the tables at TGP FIFA season three. You beat Bullet to the title. I mean, how good was that? How did you feel to finally break your TGP series curse and finally take a title in a TGP series of division?
I was delighted. Honestly, I was delighted. The fact that I had to literally play Bullet. I think we may have manufactured a me versus Bullet finale where I think the winner. I had to just either avoid defeat, otherwise he took the title. And I managed to draw 1-1, I think, in that game.
And what was it that you perhaps did differently through that season? Did you feel yourself being a little bit more consistent? Was it how can I say? Was it that you perhaps approached games slightly differently? What was it that you think in the end ended up you winning the title ahead of Bullet?
I think obviously I've got to approach it differently because I think I was Chelsea that season rather than Bayern Munich in the original season, so I had to make sure the tactics, make sure I just keep my head in games if in case I concede.
And so that was obviously your TGP FIFA career, which you did end up obviously getting some success in. And let's not forget, you also did get some success in TGP Dirt. You won the inaugural season of TGP Dirt 2, beating the likes of Alex Afro and Alistair. Again, you weren't perhaps the quickest of those three drivers that we've just mentioned there, but you did manage the consistency better. Is that where you think that you were able to win that title? Because obviously the other two did seem, at least stage by stage, the quicker drivers.
It's one of those. Dirt's a much different game to the F1 game by Codemasters. It's one of those. Sometimes in rallying, you have to just make sure you get yourself to the finish rather than outright speed. And I think my consistency that I previously demonstrated in TGP2 probably helped me in that case.
And was it a game that you enjoyed doing? Was it a sort of series that you enjoyed taking part in?
Yeah, so it's something that I'm probably not the best at, but I'll have a go. I've been in most of the TGP series that we've done over the years.
And it's something that you give another go to again if it sort of came back, is it?
Yeah, I probably haven't had the success like overall with maybe a couple of podiums, stage win or two, but I think I'm just in that. I'm just not quick enough. I don't probably push the car as much as maybe Roy or Coet.
And do you think you would be able to challenge those sort of quicker drivers, your softies, your Roys, your Courts, Dom, Phil, if you were able to sort of give it a little bit more welly, shall we say?
Well, it's a double-edged sword in rallying because if you potentially give it more welly, you're more likely to stick it in a tree or a big massive rock on the side of a stage.
Mm.
It's a risk reward.
Yeah,
Well,
yes, it is. Well,
that's one.
classic risk reward, isn't it? Really, and by the sound of it, that's something that you quite enjoy, is it?
Yeah, I didn't see anything wrong with what we did in TGP Dirt. It's one of those. It ran for about 10 seasons, so it's not like we were in and out like Disc Jam or other games.
And that obviously brings us nicely on to my next question, which is you have taken part in a lot of other disciplines within the TGP series. You mentioned Disc Jam. Obviously, you took part in Project Cars, GT Sport, Dirt Rally, Rocket League. Over the time in TGP series, you really have given a lot of time to the various different disciplines we've taken part in. What was sort of some highlights that you feel that you've had in some of the other ones that we've mentioned there? What was a league or a series that you particularly enjoyed?
Project Cars weren't bad. Well, apart from the fact I never actually won a race. I took pole in the opening race that I did in the series, but never actually won. I occasionally just turn up and had it. I was like once or twice a season I'd get like a podium, otherwise I was really midfield. Dirt we mentioned, TGP FIFA mentioned. No, I think GT Sport, I'm probably still mid pack there. It's one of those. That's another series where Kurt and Roy dominate. And I
And it
think
does. Sorry, Cam.
it's one of those. I think we had a like reverse grid sprint format for the late season, which I think helped with the new winners, and I think that did help the series because it's sometimes a bit boring where you see the same one, two, maybe three drivers keep winning all the time.
And you reckon if there was another series, you could end up being a winner of a sprint race in the not too distant future? Do you?
Yeah, depends. It depends what tracks, what car I obviously use, and others use. Because
And what car have you used in the past?
I used, I think it was a Porsche. I've used McLaren. I think last season I used a Subaru.
Okay. And what was it that made you go for the Subaru? That was obviously a car that no one else has chosen before. Why was it that you felt that one suited you well?
I think I did one of the daily races around Laguna Seca. I did a couple of them in the Subaru. I'm thinking, do you know what? This feels good. I might take it.
And obviously, you've never really had the consistency using the same car, as you said, having been in the Porsche, McLaren, and then on to the Subaru. Why is it that you think you haven't been able to nail a car down? And should, for example, another series of TGP GT come back, would you use the Subaru, or do you think you'd find yourself using a different car again?
I'll probably see what's out there, see what's probably the best that suits me, and maybe the tracks that are on the calendar. Then go from there. I think.
Sure, sure thing. Um, And I guess, Chris, a question that a lot of us in the TGP series have always wondered about your time in the series. Looking back to TGP2 many, many moons ago, I think it was all the way back on F1 2016, if my memory serves me right. Why did you go left when you said you were going to go right?
I don't know. I think. I think. I think I must have got it wrong. I think I made a mistake rather than thinking. Everyone makes mistakes. It's one of those. I probably made the wrong call. I probably went for a gap that probably wasn't there, to be fair.
Well, it was obviously very costly at the time as it ended up putting yourself out of the race. But hopefully we won't see you do that too much this season, of course. Now, looking ahead, then we've got, as we said, the remainder of the TGP2 season. Potentially, other things coming up in the near future too. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see your next title coming from in TGP? Where do you feel you can put the time in to get you another title within the series?
I'm not actually sure, to be fair. Potentially may never actually win a TGP2 title. Potentially, I don't know. Just
And
also depends what. Who knows? There might be a game that comes out in a couple of months where everyone jumps on, and for some reason I'm successful at that. Potentially.
And do you see that being? Because I think, if I'm right in saying you quite like the sort of GT stock racing, do you see yourself doing well if there was perhaps a sort of another GT league that came out, maybe on something like Assetto Corsa? Where do you think you could see yourself doing well?
Well, probably in a genre where, like cricket, where no one else plays. So I think I've got a good shot if that we get a TGP league, but I don't see that happening. To
Bowler
be
or
fair,
batter? Come on.
all rounder, I think.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
And
Can't bat,
and
can't. It's one of those can't bat, can't bowl, can't field. No, I've not played in years. So.
so could we? I mean, very likely. You never know. Are we going to see a TGP T20? Do you think that's going to happen?
No, I'll be honest. I don't think there will be the interest.
Well, you never know. I mean, there could be a whole world of cricket sim fans out there who might just end up listening to this podcast and thinking, "Yeah, let's have a TGP T20 going on, or maybe even a TGP 100. Make it nice and very relevant."
Yeah, make it shorter.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Exactly. Well, Chris, obviously, this also brings us. It almost brings us to the end of our conversation. Now we're going to go through, as we always do, towards the end of these discussions, our quick fire questions. So I guess the first question to you is, what's the favourite track you've raced on in your time? Any game?
I'd probably say Spa because I've had a pretty good amount of success around there, except when. But the problem is going up a rouge and potentially just smashing yourself in the barrier if you get on that curve too much. That's about the only issue I have with Spa.
And what's your least favourite track to race on?
France, Paul Ricard. I just never had success there. I just feel all the corners are awkward, apart from like flat out ones.
And who is it that within the series that you always enjoy coming up and racing against?
I think Joe's not bad. I've had decent battles with Dom, Paul McGuinness. I mean, really, I've not really had that too much of a negative with people racing against them.
It's very good of you to say. Um, and in terms of obviously tracks that you don't like racing at, you mentioned about France there. You mentioned obviously about the people that you enjoy racing against. Anyone you don't enjoy racing against?
No, not particularly. I know there's a time where I didn't enjoy racing against Jack Pearson. I think because we had beef outside the races in the party chats. I've had slight beef with Chris Thurgood in party chats before. I think it's basically if I have beef with them in party chats, I just want to go and beat them basically to show them better than them.
Yes. Well, it's a nice bit of motivation to have, isn't it? Really. So that's always
Yeah.
always a bonus. And finally, Chris, what would you like to see TGP have a league on in the future? Any game that either exists or doesn't exist? We mentioned about cricket very briefly, but what would you like to see TGP have a league on in the near or distant future?
I'll be honest, I don't have a clue. It's one of those. We want to make sure that there's a load of TGP people that obviously play the game, so that narrows it down a bit. Who knows? We might get a PS Plus game that everyone enjoys in the next few months, like we had with Rocket League or.
Well, there we go. Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on and joining us. Obviously, it's been interesting to hear about the trials and tribulations that you've had, obviously in the series. Unfortunately for you, mainly tribulations. But we can obviously see you on track in the TGP2 series that we've got on at the moment, racing in the McLaren. And maybe you'll be able to add to your wins tally or even the poles tally. Maybe you'll be able to get that up. But Chris, once again, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you on track very soon.
Thank you, Mike.
So there we have it. That brings to an end Series 4 of TGP Has A Podcast. You'll be pleased to hear that we've been renewed for a 5th series of TGP Has A Podcast, which will be coming to you a little bit later on in the year, where we get the opportunity to chat to yet more drivers who have made TGP as special as it has been over the last few years. But for now, it's back to the track. We've got some fantastic racing coming up over the next few weeks in TGP 1 and TGP 2, where the championships are proving very exciting in 2 very different ways. But for now, from all of us at the podcast studio, it's bye and see you on the track.